Richard Hamilton, a tech millionaire, had everything the world could envy. Tall glass towers in Manhattan, luxury cars in his garage, and stock prices climbing like rockets. But inside his vast penthouse, silence had replaced laughter. His twin sons, Michael and Gabriel, had been blind since birth. Doctors from New York to Europe had all said the same: hopeless. Richard had spent millions on treatments, yet the boys lived in endless darkness, and his heart was heavier than his fortune could carry. Every corner of the Hamilton home was padded, every sharp edge softened, every curtain pulled shut to protect the twins from light they could not see. Their mother had died giving birth, and Richard bore the pain of losing his wife while raising children who would never watch the sunrise. To the world, he was a powerful man, but at night, when the twins sobbed in their rooms, he was just a broken father. One rainy morning, Richard interviewed a new maid. Isabella Johnson arrived quietly, an African-American woman in plain clothes, neat and simple. The security guard looked her over with doubt, his tone sharp as he muttered, "Service entrance is at the back." She straightened her shoulders and replied firmly, "I'm here by appointment with Mr. Hamilton." It was the first hint that she was not the kind to be dismissed easily. Inside, the house manager Celia gave Isabella a polite smile, but the longtime nanny Martha threw her a cold glance. To Martha, Isabella was just the help, another temporary worker who would never last. Richard entered, formal in his suit, his face weary yet disciplined. He explained the rules. "This house has order. My children's therapy is strict. Please don't interfere. I can't afford false hope again." His voice cracked at the last words. Isabella listened calmly and simply said, "I don't promise what I can't deliver. I'll respect your pain, La." That day, Isabella passed the family room where the twins sat, small and fragile in oversized chairs. They rocked back and forth, whispering to each other. Martha scrolled her phone, paying them no mind. Isabella hesitated. She remembered her younger brother, who had been visually impaired before tragedy took him. Against the rule of "don't interfere," her heart pulled her forward. She sprayed a bottle of cleaner. Psst! The sound made both boys lift their heads at once. Isabella smiled gently. "Hi there, I'm Isabella. Want to listen to the sounds with me?" Gabriel giggled, clapping in rhythm. Michael tapped his fingers, echoing the sound. For the first time in weeks, laughter filled the air. Isabella's eyes drifted toward the heavy curtains. She whispered softly, "If we just try a little, only a little light." With cautious fingers, she opened the fabric by a slit. A thin beam of sunlight touched the carpet. The twins turned their faces instantly. Michael whispered, "Something feels different." Gabriel trembled, "It's brighter." Isabella stepped across the beam. They noticed. Their heads followed her shadow with uncanny precision. Tears burned her eyes. It wasn't vision, not yet, but it was something. Hope flickered like a flame inside the darkness. She quickly closed the curtain before Martha returned. The boys leaned closer to her, whispering, "Please, again tomorrow." Isabella nodded, her heart pounding. For the first time since their birth, the Hamilton twins had found a crack in their endless night, and for the first time in years, a stranger dared to believe light could still enter this house. The next morning, Isabella woke earlier than anyone else. She carried her small wooden box of tools, a flashlight, contrast cards, and a clicking toy she once used for her brother. She repeated Richard's words in her head, "Don't interfere with therapy." But her heart couldn't ignore the boys' silent cries. Celia, the house manager, welcomed her politely, but Martha, the nanny, blocked the hallway with a smirk. "Don't think you're special. We've had many like you. Clean and keep quiet." Isabella simply smiled, refusing to rise to the insult. She knew prejudice wore many faces, and silence was sometimes the strongest reply. When Isabella entered the family room, the twins immediately perked up. Michael asked, "Are we playing the sound game today?" Gabriel clapped in excitement. Martha's voice cut sharp. "No games. Your schedule is strict." But Isabella bent low, whispering, "It's only listening. No harm in listening." The boys giggled, and Martha rolled her eyes. Isabella tapped gently on the table. Tap, tap. The boys tapped back. Then she whispered, "Ready for something new?" She cracked the curtain, letting in a thread of light. The beam slid across the carpet like a golden ribbon. Michael turned his face toward it. Gabriel reached out, trembling but curious. Isabella stepped into the beam and the boys gasped. It feels like someone walked in front of us. It wasn't vision yet, but it was awareness. For children who had known only darkness, this was magic. Isabella fought tears as she whispered, "That's shadow. Light makes shadows." Their little hands clutched hers tightly, but Martha had returned silently and saw everything. Her voice sliced the air. "What do you think you're doing?" Isabella froze. The twins shrank in fear. Martha stormed forward. "I warned you. Stay in your place. You people always think you know better." The words carried venom, meant to push Isabella into shame. Before Isabella could answer, Richard entered the room, phone still at his ear. Martha hurried to complain. "She's interfering with the children's therapy. She could harm them." Richard's eyes hardened. He dismissed Isabella with a wave. "Miss Johnson, I told you the rules. Do not overstep." His voice was cold, final. Isabella lowered her gaze, her chest tight. She wanted to argue, to tell him the truth of what had just happened, but she remembered the twins' hopeful faces. She bowed her head and whispered, "Yes, sir." Then she left the room, swallowing her pride. That night, however, Michael and Gabriel refused to sleep. They kept whispering to each other, their words carrying down the halls. "We saw something. We felt light." Their laughter echoed, strange and unfamiliar to the walls of the Hamilton home. For years, sorrow had ruled here, but now a spark of joy slipped through the cracks. Isabella, sitting alone in her small staff quarters, opened her notebook. She wrote carefully, "Light does not hurt. Twins are curious. Trust is building. Must move carefully." She closed the book, whispering to herself, "For them, I will endure every insult." The house may have treated her as invisible, but the twins had begun to see her in ways deeper than sight, and that alone gave her strength. Days passed, and Isabella kept to her duties, dusting, polishing, arranging the vast penthouse until it gleamed like a museum. She kept her distance, just as Richard demanded, yet every time she crossed paths with the twins, their little faces lit up. Michael would ask softly, "Isabella, will you make the sound again?" Gabriel would add, "Please, just one game." She couldn't refuse. While Martha scrolled her phone, Isabella quietly used her tricks. A clicker toy spun and hummed, and the boys clapped to its rhythm. She whispered about shadows, about how light could dance. She never pushed too far, but the twins grew bolder each day. One morning, Gabriel whispered, "I felt it again, the warm stripe on the carpet." Isabella's heart leapt. She knew their senses were stretching, learning to recognize what everyone else had declared impossible. Yet the more progress she saw, the more resistance she felt from others. Martha watched her like a hawk. The older woman would mutter, "You think you're clever? You'll ruin these boys. Stop filling their heads with nonsense." Isabella answered with calm dignity, "Hope isn't nonsense. It's fuel." But Martha sneered, "Hope doesn't clean floors. Stick to your job." Richard, meanwhile, buried himself in work. His fortune grew, but his patience with hope had long vanished. When he noticed the boys whispering excitedly about light, his jaw tightened. "Don't encourage them. They've suffered enough false miracles." His words were iron, but behind his eyes lingered exhaustion. Still, Isabella believed. Late one afternoon, while dusting near the library, she overheard the twins arguing. Michael insisted, "I know I felt brightness." Gabriel shouted back, "Me too." Their voices were filled with wonder instead of sorrow. Isabella's eyes stung. That joy alone was worth every scolding. The breakthrough came unexpectedly. While cleaning the garage and hall, Isabella opened the curtain slightly to shake out the dust. A sliver of golden sunlight streamed in. The twins, sitting across the room, gasped. Both boys turned their faces perfectly toward the light. Michael raised his hand, trembling. "It's warm. Right here." Gabriel pointed the same way. "It's brighter there." Isabella froze, her heart hammering. They weren't just sensing shadows. They were recognizing light itself. She wanted to shout for Richard to show him, but Martha's footsteps thundered in. "What did I say?" Martha's fury filled the room. She yanked the curtain shut. "This is dangerous. You'll ruin them." The twins clung to Isabella, their little voices pleading, "Don't stop, please don't stop." Richard arrived moments later, drawn by the noise. Martha launched into her accusations. "She's disobeying orders. She's putting the children at risk." Richard's gaze fell on Isabella. His voice was tired, cold. "Miss Johnson, I cannot tolerate defiance in this house." For a moment, Isabella's resolve nearly cracked, but then she looked at the twins, their faces glowing with hope. She stepped forward and spoke gently yet firmly. "Sir, your sons felt the light. They turned toward it. They knew it. That means something. Please, don't shut it away." The room fell silent. Richard's eyes darkened, unreadable. Martha smirked, confident that Isabella would be dismissed, but the twins clutched her hands, their small voices trembling. "Father, she's right. The light didn't hurt us." Richard hesitated, his breath caught between disbelief and fear. Isabella lowered her gaze. "I will accept any punishment, but I cannot ignore what I saw in them." The weight of her words hung heavy in the air. For the first time in years, someone had dared to challenge the despair that ruled this mansion. Richard stood frozen in the family room, torn between anger and disbelief. For 7 years, specialists had declared it impossible, and he had learned to live with the verdict. Yet here was a maid claiming that his sons had responded to light. Martha stood beside him, arms crossed, voice dripping with scorn. "She's overstepping. Fire her before she makes things worse." Michael and Gabriel clung to Isabella's hands, their tiny voices desperate. "Father, we felt it. It was real." Richard's lips tightened. His logical mind screamed that it was nonsense, but the tremor in his son's voices broke through. Instead of dismissing her, he said coldly, "One chance. You may try, but only under my supervision. Fail once, and you leave." Martha gasped, "Sir, this is reckless." But Richard silenced her with a look. Isabella bowed her head. "Thank you, sir. I will not waste it." The next morning, Isabella carefully prepared. She adjusted the curtains in the library so a thin line of sunlight fell across the floor. The twins sat on the rug, their hands trembling with anticipation. Richard leaned against the wall, arms folded, skeptical yet curious. Martha hovered, ready to pounce at the first mistake. "All right, my brave boys," Isabella whispered. She tapped her fingers, tap, tap, then stepped into the beam of light. "Tell me, what changed?" Gabriel gasped. "It got darker when you moved," Michael added quickly, "then brighter again when you stepped away." Isabella's chest swelled with pride. She glanced at Richard. His expression was tight, but his eyes betrayed shock. She pulled out the contrast cards, one black, one white. Holding them before the light, she asked softly, "Which side feels brighter?" Michael pointed unerringly toward the white card. Gabriel followed, grinning. That one glows." The room fell into stunned silence. Richard's breath hitched, but Martha exploded. "Coincidence, parlor tricks. She's filling their heads with lies." Isabella turned calmly, her voice steady. "Children cannot fake joy. What you saw was real. They are sensing light, maybe for the first time." Richard rubbed his temples, torn between the scientist's verdicts and the miracle before him. He dismissed the session abruptly, muttering, "Enough for today." But as he walked out, he couldn't stop replaying the boys' excited voices in his mind. Later that night, Richard stood alone in his study, staring at a photograph of his late wife. His heart whispered what his pride refused to admit. Maybe, just maybe, there is hope. Meanwhile, in the staff quarters, Isabella wrote in her notebook, "Progress confirmed, twins recognize contrast. Richard uncertain, but not rejecting, need patience." She smiled faintly, whispering to herself, "We will keep pushing, one step at a time." The next morning, as Isabella prepared breakfast, Gabriel's voice echoed down the hall. "Isabella, can we play with the light again?" Richard heard it too. Instead of scolding, he paused, his face unreadable. Hope, once banished from the Hamilton household, had begun to creep back through a narrow slit in the curtains. The Hamilton penthouse, once heavy with silence, now hummed with faint laughter. Each morning, Michael and Gabriel waited eagerly for Isabella. Their voices rang with joy. Isabella, show us the light game. For two boys who had lived in endless darkness, these small discoveries were miracles. But not everyone celebrated. Martha seethed with resentment. She cornered Isabella one evening, her voice laced with venom. You think you're some savior? You're nothing but a maid. Stop pretending you know better than doctors. You'll only disappoint them. Isabella met her glare calmly. If hope is a crime, then yes, I am guilty. But I will not stop giving these children joy. Martha's lips curled. You people never know your place. The words burned, but Isabella swallowed the pain, choosing dignity over anger. Richard remained caught between doubt and wonder. He watched quietly as the boys responded to shadows and contrasts, their excitement undeniable. Yet his pride chained him. He had trusted experts with global reputations. How could a maid achieve what millions of dollars had not? His heart whispered yes, but his mind shouted no. One afternoon, Isabella prepared a new exercise. She placed a glowing toy near the window. The twins reached out, hands trembling, faces glowing with awe. It's there! It shines! Michael exclaimed. Gabriel clapped, laughing. It's brighter than before. Richard, standing in the doorway, froze. His sons weren't guessing. They were truly following light. For the first time in years, he felt something stir in his chest, a fragile spark of belief. But before he could speak, Martha rushed forward. She snatched the toy away. This is dangerous. They'll get hurt clinging to illusions. The twins cried out, clinging to Isabella. Michael shouted, Don't take it away, we can feel it. Gabriel sobbed into Isabella's arm. Martha turned on Richard. Sir, end this nonsense before they're broken again. Isabella stood, her voice firm but respectful. Mr. Hamilton, your children are not broken. They are stronger than anyone gives them credit for. All they need is patience and love. Richard's jaw tightened. He dismissed everyone with a wave, unable to speak. That night he sat alone by the window, watching city lights shimmer. His wife's voice echoed in memory. Promise me you'll never give up on them. Tears filled his eyes. For years, he had buried that promise under despair. Now, this maid had dared to remind him. Meanwhile, Isabella comforted the twins in their room. She whispered softly, No one can take away what you've discovered. Light is inside you now, and I will stay until you see it fully. The boys clutched her hands, whispering back, We trust you. For the first time in 7 years, hope was no longer just a word. It was alive, in their laughter, in their trembling hands reaching toward the light. The tension in the Hamilton home reached its breaking point. Martha's resentment boiled hotter each day. She whispered to Richard, She's filling their heads with fantasies. End this before they're hurt forever. But Richard no longer dismissed what he had seen with his own eyes. His sons were changing, smiling, laughing, reaching toward the light. The weight of despair was lifting, and he couldn't ignore it. One afternoon, Isabella prepared a final test. She placed 2 glowing lamps on opposite sides of the family room. Tell me, which one shines brighter? She asked softly. The twins tilted their heads, hesitant but eager. Michael pointed left. Gabriel whispered, The right one flickers. Their answers matched perfectly. Richard's breath caught. Tears stung his eyes as he stepped closer. You truly see it? Michael turned his face toward his father. We can feel the light, Father. Isabella showed us. For the first time in years, Richard dropped to his knees before his children. He gathered them into his arms, sobbing openly. I thought it was hopeless. I was wrong. His heart, long caged by grief, cracked wide open. Martha, furious, burst out, This is ridiculous. She's deceiving you. She's nothing but a maid. Richard rose slowly, his voice steady but sharp. Enough, Martha. For years you watched my children cry and offered them nothing. Isabella gave them hope when no one else dared. She stays. You go. Martha gasped, her face pale. For once her authority crumbled. She stormed out, her footsteps echoing like defeat. Justice had been served in the simplest but most powerful way. Truth revealed, cruelty exposed. Isabella bowed her head, tears shimmering in her eyes. I only wanted them to believe in the light. Richard placed a hand on her shoulder. You did more than that. You gave them back their futures, and you gave me back my promise to their mother. From that day forward, the Hamilton penthouse transformed. Curtains no longer remained sealed. Light streamed through wide windows. Laughter filled rooms once drowned in silence. Isabella worked tirelessly, guiding the boys with patience and love. Step by step, their vision sharpened until shapes, colors, and shadows became part of their world. Richard often watched from the doorway, humbled. He realized that wealth had bought him doctors and machines, but not hope. Hope had come from a woman the world had tried to underestimate, a black maid who carried more wisdom than all his riches combined. Months later, during a family gathering, Michael tugged at his father's hand. Look, father, the sky, it's blue. Gabriel added, and the flowers, they shine. Richard's knees buckled as tears streamed down his face. Around him, relatives stared in shock, unable to believe what they saw. Isabella stood quietly at the edge of the room, smiling softly. She needed no applause. The twins' laughter was reward enough. Richard raised his voice, his tone proud and clear. Never again will anyone in this house be judged by their status or their skin. Respect is owed to all. Isabella proved that. The room fell silent, the truth undeniable. A maid had done what money could not, and in doing so she had restored not only sight, but dignity, love, and justice.